Hey, I'm John Grant, and welcome back to the Johnny Grant Show. Almost every team that fired their head coaches have found their replacement, so on today's episode, I'll be grading those head coaching hires. The reason I had to say almost every team found their replacement is because of one team, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Joe Brady and Mike McCarthy pulled themselves out of the running. Their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, went over to Seattle to be their new offensive coordinator. They interviewed Kellen Moore and Mike Kafka, but both of those options are far from great and would be one and done in my opinion. The Saints are in a bad spot here like usual. They've been in the negative and cap space for what feels like a decade. Most of all the head coaching options didn't want to go there because New Orleans is just not a desirable place for any coach to go to. They're $70 million in the negatives. They got a bunch of old players on big contracts and just not a lot to work with. New Orleans is looking like a dumpster fire, so their grade for me is just not active. Next up, we got the New York Jets. They hired Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. I think this is a good hire, definitely a player's coach, a guy that players can rally around, a former Jets first-round pick, and I think it's a great fit for the Jets. A good leader, and I think he can definitely change the culture around there. It will be interesting to see what they decide to do at quarterback, and when the offseason opened up, I immediately linked Aaron Glenn to the Jets, so this hire gets an A- for me. Next up, we got the New England Patriots. They hired Mike Vrabel, who was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans and spent last season as a consultant on the Cleveland Browns. Vrabel's already a proven winner, and he should have never been fired from the Titans. He's a former Patriot. The organization already loves him, and he's a great leader. I love this hire. I think it's a perfect fit for New England, but shame on them for setting up Jared Mayo to fail like they did. But the NFL is a business, and the Patriots are definitely better off with Vrabel than they would be with Mayo. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears. They hired Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. He's a flashy play caller, the biggest name out of all the hires, and Caleb Williams made it real clear that Johnson was the guy that he wanted. I think Johnson and Williams could very well be the next big head coach and quarterback duo, and Ben also could have been a coach last year, but he waited for the perfect fit, and I think he found that in Chicago. This also gets an A for me. So here's where the hires got a little bit more confusing. We go to Dallas Cowboys. They hired Brian Schottenheimer, their in-house offensive coordinator. Schottenheimer is just a lousy hire in my opinion. I'm a Seahawks fan, and I remember Schotty's play calling in Seattle that led to him getting fired. I didn't even hate him, but I just can't see this guy doing more than 1 year as a head coach and being successful and trying to turn this Cowboys team around. This is just a classic Jerry Jones move. Somebody go check on all those Cowboys fans because if you thought McCarthy was bad, it's about to get worse. Maybe I'm going a little too hard on Schotty because he's never been a head coach before, but I just can't see it being any good. The Cowboys get a D for me. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders hiring Pete Carroll, former head coach of my Seattle Seahawks. It makes me sad to see Carroll coaching another team. I wasn't as sad when he and Seattle parted ways because he wasn't going anywhere else and he just became a teacher at USC. I thought this was it for him in the NFL, but he's back now. Obviously, players love him. You wouldn't think Pete is 73 years old by the way he acts, but this still gets a C+ for me because I think Vegas needs a lot of work, and that's going to be hard to do with a 73-year-old head coach. I think they can definitely be successful, but this is not a move to get towards contention, in my opinion. I would have rather seen a team like Dallas hire Carroll because they're just they're more like a few pieces away from contending. But I wish Pete all the best. He's definitely my favorite coach of all time, and I hope he can do some good in Vegas. And for our last coach, the Jacksonville Jaguars hiring of Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a really awkward guy. That interview was hard to watch, but on paper, this is a solid hire. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs offense had a great year under Cohen, and he could be the right guy to get Trevor Lawrence over the hump and get his career finally going. And that is it on this week for the Johnny Grant Show. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.